So our topic today, once again, is sharing our grief and our hope with one another as leaders. We pray you will find this time together to be a safe and even brave space for you to bring your fears, your questions, your grief, your anxiety, and yes, even your hope. We gather recognizing that we are not going to find all the answers in this session, and at the same time knowing that there is power in being gathered together in community. We are blessed to have a guest speaker that will share some thoughts with us on the topic of grief and hope. Following this presentation, we will also have an opportunity to break into small groups to have a time of sharing with one another. I want to thank the team of ELCA coaches that have joined us today to help lead these discussions. I invite us to center ourselves in Christ by hearing the words of Scripture. When I was thinking about what texts to offer today, I was struck once again at the serendipity of things. I needed to look no further than the assigned lessons for this coming Sunday. Lessons that many of you are already wrestling with, likely, as you prepare to bring the good news to the people you serve. God's timing, as always, is simply amazing. As we stand on the front end of this pandemic, scrambling to absorb what might be ahead of us, the author of Psalm 130 gives us voice. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. As we watch caregivers beg for protective equipment, doctors weeping from the weight of making decisions about who will receive care and who will die, and as we feel the enormous cloud of anxiety and grief settle heavily across our globe, we hear these words from the Gospel of John, chapter 11. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. Let me pause in the reading for a moment and point out something very significant here. Jesus wept, even though he knew the resurrection was coming. This is very important modeling for us. And the reading continues. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you if you believed you would see the glory of God? So they took the stone away, and Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. As this story ends, we see, on the heels of grief, that we also experience hope, the hope we have in the power of the resurrection at work in the world. It is in this spirit that I introduce to you our guest speaker. Dr. Don Eisenhower is the founder of Coaching at End of Life. He is a pastor and a master certified coach accredited by the International Coach Federation. He is the author of the books Coaching at End of Life and Coach Yourself Through Grief. Don has a passion to help people live fully until they die. He enjoys teaching and equipping coaches, hospice workers, funeral directors, clergy, friends, and family members to better support and care for the dying and grieving in their midst. Don has personally helped me navigate the grief of losing my youngest son and both of my parents in a relatively short time frame. Professionally, he is our newest training partner in helping to equip our coaching ministry to accompany others through losses in life. It's an honor to call Don my colleague and friend, and I'm confident you will walk away with a new perspective on life as you journey with Don today. And with that, Don.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. First of all, would you give me permission to share my screen? Oh, you're muted.
You should be able to just share your screen.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, Jason, can you fix that, please?
I'm not able to in the moment, but Don, are you able to just do the request and then Jill, you should receive that at the very top of your screen, if I remember correctly. Or no, it's the bottom, sorry. We're all learning in this time.
Yeah, when I'm pushing on the screen sharing, it just comes up that the host disabled for me from being able to do so.
Shoot. Okay.
I can see and hear him.
Yeah,
Right.
you can see my video, but not my PowerPoint.
Oh,
The host can share hosting privileges, which might let the
Yeah.
Right.
participant share
We did
screen.
change some settings because of security stuff. The only option I know would be to possibly send Don Jill's login information. Do we
Or
need to
make
do
me
that?
the host. If you go into on the participant screen, go to my name, go to the right, and you'll see where it says more. And then you should be able to make me the host.
There you go. That should work. All right.
Good?
Yes, it does.
This is great learning for all of you, right? Seriously, because we're all going to face this. Okay.
It works. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yay. That is exactly right. Learning technology is very much a part of this. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It is a great privilege to be able to sit and to share with all of you. Our topic for today, as you saw on the announcement that was sent out, is sharing our grief and our hope with one another as leaders. As you well know, we are in the midst of a pandemic of COVID-19. A pandemic is simply a global outbreak. And we see this in the news daily, hourly, of the effects of this pandemic. But what I think is important to realize is not only do we have a pandemic of this virus, COVID-19, but there is now a pandemic of grief that's taken place, a global outbreak, a pandemic of crisis and stress as well. And for all of you who are signed in here, I know that you're right in the midst of that. You've heard it from all the members of your faith community. You've been very much in the trenches with all of them in the midst of this pandemic. But as far as today and the focus that we have, I want to move beyond all the members of your faith communities. And to be able to say from my experience anyway, and talking to countless numbers of people over these last days and weeks, I'm seeing this pandemic affecting our congregational leaders as well. Our pastors, our lay leaders. And I know that many of you have been serving your congregations tirelessly over the last few weeks. And I just want to say right now, thank you. I commend you for what you've been doing. You've been scrambling to find ways to provide worship. You've been scrambling to find ways to be able to deal with money that's not coming in. You've been scrambling to find ways to be able to connect with members of your congregation and meeting their needs. And I am just so grateful for all that you've been doing. But today, for this hour anyway, I'm going to ask you to do something totally different, something that might be a little difficult for some of you to do. And that's to focus on yourself and not on those whom you serve. Okay, we're going to come back next Wednesday and we're going to focus on those whom you serve. Okay, we're going to have the opportunity to talk about how can we be really present with all of them. But today, it's all about you. Okay, you know what your congregations are feeling. But for this hour, I want you to consider, what is it that you're feeling in the midst of this pandemic? What is it that you, whatever your role is, you as an individual, what are you experiencing? Because as leaders, we're not exempt from these feelings either. Every time you get in an airplane, you're reminded of the whole saying, when the oxygen falls, put it on yourself before you put it on the children. That's what we want to invite you to do today, is to put the oxygen on yourself, because then you're going to be even better equipped to be with those who are part of your faith communities. So what are you feeling right now? If you're really honest and real with yourself and with all of us, what are you feeling? And I'm not asking you to share now because we don't have a whole lot of time, but I want you to reflect on that. I had the opportunity a couple days ago to do a talk with the ELCA coaches. And I shared with them that the word I've been using for what I've been feeling is that I'm free falling. And I put up this picture. What do you feel when you look at this picture? And again, just reflect on it yourself. Because what I've been experiencing myself and what I've been hearing a lot of people sharing is that the emotions, the feelings that come up when you look at this picture are often the feelings that we're experiencing in the midst of this pandemic. That we are free falling, and what's around us? Where am I going to land? What's in store for the minutes, the days, the weeks, the years ahead? In my book, Coach Yourself Through Grief, I describe 8 principles that people can use in order to help themselves work through times of loss. 8 principles that they can focus on in the midst of the grief that they're experiencing. What I'd like to do in just the 15 minutes or so that we have remaining here is to tweak, to adjust these 8 principles a little bit, to ask how can we use these very same principles to coach ourselves through the feelings of COVID-19. A reminder, this is all about you. Okay? I'm inviting you to put the mask on yourself first. So with that in mind, let's dig in. The first principle, find a safe and a brave space. You know, even as leaders, pastors, lay leaders, it is so important that we find people and places with whom we can share whatever it is that we're feeling or experiencing. Okay, what are you experiencing and feeling? I don't know. Maybe it's some of these feelings. This is called the tangled ball of emotions. I use this in my teaching of caring for those who are grieving to describe what the normal feelings of grief often look like. Okay, you notice how all these different emotions are all tangled up and mixed up together? Maybe you're feeling and experiencing some of these emotions today. Maybe it's some of these free-falling emotions that you're experiencing. Whatever your feelings and emotions are, they're yours, so there are not right or wrong. They're all right because they're yours. It's important that we find places, brave and safe places where we can express them. What does it mean to have a safe and a brave place to express them? Well, it means that you're with people or you're in places that are going to allow you to hurt. You know what? It's hard to find places like that, especially in the church. Because you know why? The church people are just too loving. That's a good thing that church people are so loving. But you know what? They're so loving that when somebody's hurting, the first thing they want to do right away is to make them feel better. I say, oh, come on, don't cry, don't be upset. Let's make you feel better. Let's do something else. You know what, friends? What I'm suggesting is there are times when we need to allow ourselves to hurt. And we need to find other people who are going to allow us to hurt as we express the depth of what it is that we're experiencing in times such as this, in the midst of a pandemic. Because you know what? The reality is grief hurts. Being in the midst of a pandemic hurts. Being in the midst of trying to be church when things are so different, it can hurt. It says on the screen about the word bereaved. Okay. I don't know if you know what the word bereaved originally means. You know, we use that kind of as a synonym for grief, but the word bereaved literally means to be torn apart and to have special needs. I think many of us have felt parts of who we are and parts of what we do in our ministries just torn apart from us. Okay? The way we've done church all forever has been torn apart from us. So it means that we need to find places and we need to find people who are going to allow us to hurt for a time, who are going to allow us to cry, who give us permission to feel whatever it is we want to feel, to be able to say whatever we want to say, to be able to do whatever we want to do. Now, that does not mean that it's okay to harm ourselves or to harm someone else or to do things that are illegal or unethical. That's not what I'm talking about. But beyond that, places where we can be absolutely real and share, this is what I'm experiencing. Do you have those safe and brave places where you can share in this way? Okay, Jill and Jason have set up a place for you right here where you're going to have the opportunity to do that. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to break off into breakout rooms, and we want them to be really safe and brave places where you can share anything. But even beyond this hour today, I want to encourage you to seek out other safe and brave spaces. Let me hit the pause button for just a minute, because I imagine some of you are squirming a little bit at this point and saying, why are we focusing on the negative? Why do we want to be talking about these negative things we're feeling? Shouldn't we focus on hope? Well, yeah, we're going to focus on hope. We're going to get there. But right alongside of the hope, I believe we also need to give permission and a space to talk about the grief. You know, you as leaders know this better than anyone. You're used to these both and words, right? We talk about sinner and saint being right there together, don't we? We talk about law and gospel both being there at the same time. And I want to suggest that we can add to that list, grief and hope need to be there at the same time. We're talking about both of them today, but I think for most of us, it's a lot easier and we turn automatically to go to the hope. And sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to focus on the grief side of that as well. So find a safe and a brave place where you can share. Let me go on to number 2. Principle number 2 is board the roller coaster and hold on tight. I don't know how many of you like roller coasters. Would you like to ride on this? How's that for a pretty steep? I see some heads nodding. How about this one? Twists and turns and upside down. If we had time to ask about whether you'd like to ride on these, I imagine there are many of you who are saying, no way. That is so scary. I would be sick to my stomach. I'd probably throw up. Oh, that looks terrible. Don't let me on there. And you know what? To think about being really real with your emotions right now. To think about sharing them in a safe place and expressing exactly what we're feeling is probably just as scary. And you know what my encouragement is? You get on that roller coaster anyway. You get on that roller coaster and allow yourself to feel and experience whatever it is you're experiencing. Maybe some of the grief emotions, because there's a lot of grief right now, isn't it? Maybe it's some of the free-falling feelings. But you climb on that roller coaster and just allow yourself to go for the ride of your life. The best thing that you can do with all those feelings and emotions is to let them out. You know, we live in a world that always says stuff those emotions in. Don't share them. Just keep them inside of you. But no, I'm encouraging you instead to embrace those emotions, to become a friend to these feelings. You know, typically if we put our hand on the stove, it hurts, we pull our hand away. We avoid the pain. Okay, if we start pinching ourselves, we stop because it hurts. Why do we want to hurt ourselves? Well, this is one time I'm suggesting we go against that and allow ourselves to really feel and express what we're feeling. Let me share why this is so important. In our teaching about grief, one of the comments that we regularly teach on is the difference between grief and mourning. Okay, usually we use these words interchangeably. And oh yeah, I'm grieving, I'm mourning, pretty much the same. They're not the same. Grief is what we feel on the inside when we experience a loss. Mourning is the outward expression of that grief. It's not enough just to grieve a loss. We need to mourn, to let that out, and we let it out by crying, by telling our story, by going through many of the rituals, okay, many different ways that we can let the grief out, that we can mourn. But do you know what happens if we don't intentionally let it out? It always finds its own way to come out. And whenever it finds its own way to come out, it's not pretty. It comes out through depression. It comes out through fits of anger. It comes out through other physical illnesses of this grief that's just not mourned and waiting to come out. And it still comes out in that way. And I believe the same thing is true of these emotions of a pandemic. It is important if we want to be healthy and we want to be able to serve the people who got us placed in our care, then we need to intentionally find ways to let it out. So get on that roller coaster and go for the ride of your life. I coached a pastor this morning, and she was so angry. She was realizing that she might not have a church to serve in the time to come. The finances aren't coming in. It's been such a struggle and a stress to be able to do church and to serve in her role. And the best thing I could do is to give her that place where she could share that pain and that anger and that frustration, because that's what was so real to her. And there was a safe place for her to get it out in our coaching. Find your safe places to do the same. Let me keep moving. Number 3, tell your story. This is just building on that. One of the best, most helpful things that we can do when experiencing grief and crisis is to tell our story. What do I mean by that? I mean talking about your experience, saying, this is what I'm going through. Talking about your unique situation. Sharing about the ways that you're facing it and how you feel when you stop and get alone and are allowing yourselves to be really real. This is all part of the mourning we were talking about. How does it feel when you tell your story? The pastor who I coached this morning said, I feel so much better just to be able to let it out. I feel so much more free. Number 4, learn what's normal in grief and crisis. You know, what many people are experiencing today is something that they've never experienced before. And they say, I just feel like things are so different. I feel like I'm on planet Mars rather than here on Earth. I'm just in such a different place. And a question that I get asked a lot in the grief arena and that I've been hearing now in this pandemic arena, am I going crazy? Okay, it feels that way sometimes. And what we do a lot in the area of grief, and I think what we need to do here is to normalize those feelings. Hey, this is for you, and I just want you to know that whatever it is you're feeling and experiencing now, that you're going to get to talk about in the breakout rooms, they are a normal and natural reactions to this pandemic. Okay? Sometimes we forget that, and we think, especially as a leader, as a lay leader in the church, as a pastor, I shouldn't be feeling that way. Oh, absolutely. That is a normal response. So there isn't anything you share today that's going to be in the realm of abnormal or wrong or that you shouldn't say it. Okay? There are some actions that we can do in response to those feelings that are wrong, as I said before, but whatever you're feeling is not wrong. And these are safe places. These are brave places where you can express them. And I really hope you'll do that today. No, it's normal. Number 5, the 5th principle, take as much time as you need. You know, we live in a microwave mentality where we want everything to be quick. We want grief to be over in a very short amount of time. Well, it's very clear that COVID-19 is not going to go away very quickly. And your feelings and your emotions, whatever it is you're experiencing, that's not going to go away really quickly either. And friends, that's okay. Take as much time as you need. Jill said this in the very beginning. We're not expecting you're going to get all the answers and you're going to have this hour and say, oh, good, now I'm done. Now I'm better. I'm free. Okay. What we're doing in this hour is just setting the model for what we hope you're going to continue to be doing and what I need to continue to do day in and day out through this time. We go to principle number 6. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. You know what, friends? You need to know you are the expert as to what you need. Your grief, your crisis journey is unique, and nobody else knows what you need better than what you do. So when we go into these breakout rooms, don't start comparing yourself to other people and say, wow, look how far along they are. Wow, look what they're able to say. Wow, they're all in the hope category. What's wrong with me? I'm still in the grief category. No, there's no comparing. Okay? Don't let anybody else say, this is what you need to do to get over it. Maybe it helps them, but you need to figure out what you need to do and how you need to best express this. You are the expert of what you need. Please hold on to that, friends. Principle number 7. Celebrate your growth. You know, even in the midst of a crisis, there can be tremendous growth that takes place. Growth in your relationship with God, growth in the leadership of your church as they step up to the plate, growth in your incorporating technology into your ministry and even learning how to use it as we're doing here today. We could go on and on. But ask yourself, what's the gift in this? What is it that I have to celebrate even in the midst of these sometimes really painful, difficult emotions? And then principle number 8, hold on to hope. I told you before, we're not neglecting hope, and hope could probably be in the very beginning because it's the most important. But there's sometimes we just focus so much on hope, we forget about the grief and the crisis and the pain part of it. But hope is very real. Hold on to hope in the midst of all of this. The Apostle Paul said it this way to the Corinthians. Therefore, we don't lose heart, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. Or even what he said to the Thessalonians about grief. Yeah, we still grieve, but we don't grieve as those who are without hope. Absolutely, hope is the biggest part of it, and you're all the experts on hope. sinner and saint, law and gospel, grief and hope, they can fit right there together. And acknowledging and talking about the grief, as we want to give you an opportunity to do today, does not take away that hope whatsoever, any more than sinner or saint does, or law and gospel. They fit together. But let me just say one thing. Be careful not to rush these last two principles. The last two principles of celebrate your growth and hold on to hope. Okay? Because sometimes we need to really focus on the crisis and the grief part before we can get to the growth and the hope part. Okay? This hope and the growth part will come, but let them come at the time that they're there. Don't force them and to force out the grief portion. So these are the 8 principles for coaching yourself through COVID-19. Find a safe and a brave space. Board that roller coaster and hold on tight. Tell your story. Learn what is normal in grief and crisis. Take as much time as you need. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. Celebrate your growth and hold on to hope. We can talk about these principles and write them down and say, I can learn what the 8 principles are. But you know what's far more important than that? Doing them. Living them out. That's what this next time is all about. Remember the title? Sharing our grief and our hope with one another as leaders. This was just an introduction to the real key and focus of this hour. Please take advantage of this time. Jill?
And Don, thank you. I'm going to invite you to make me a co-host or make me host again. I could not build the breakout rooms. And so part of our sharing right now is going to be sharing a few questions while I quickly throw people into the breakout rooms.
Okay. Need to find out how to do that. Make host. Well, I lost Joe. I just made somebody else the host. Oh, if you just got a notice about being the host, your name moved, and AK Knighton, I think I just made you the host. Could you not accept that, maybe? Did you get a note?
I got a note briefly and then it clicked off.
And then it clicked off. Okay, you are still listed as the host. Would you please go up to, could you find Jill's name on the participant list, please?
Yeah, I see her name.
Okay, go to the right. And if you put your mouse all the way to the right where the mute button is, and go to the more, and you should be able to make her host. Okay, Jill, you're the host.
Great, thank you. We learned some things about security that another time we can talk about why we put these measures in place. But yeah, so thank you for that. I'm going to build the breakout rooms while people share questions with Don.
Is Don able to take down his screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, there we go.
Wonderful. Any questions that you have?
Don, I'll jump in if it's all right. This is Carol Schultz in San Diego.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, I'm not a grief coach, but my life experience tells me that you were wise in 7 and 8 to say not to rush them. But I'm also wondering what you would say about the fact that maybe we get to 7 and 8 and then we cycle back to
absolutely.
an earlier phase.
Absolutely. These are not in order of doing them, and we're going to be experiencing them even when we start celebrating the growth. That's a part of the whole grief and mourning experience. So you're exactly right. We can jump right back to the grief and to the pain and then come back and continue to hold on to hope. They all fit in there together. Very
I
great
think in our
insight, Carol.
society, we tend to be linear thinkers.
You're
And
right.
we go through step A, B, and C to arrive at D.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of the people in my grief groups and who are saying, I went out and I was actually smiling and happy today, but everyone looked around and said, oh, good, you're over it now. Now we can just move on. No, allow me to share my positive emotions as well, but it doesn't mean that I'm over it. So really good point, Carol.
Thank you.
Someone else.
This is Sunny. I would, maybe it's more of a comment than it is a question. I'm in Nebraska, and so a good share of our congregations are in rural settings. And it's always that question of who can I talk to, because I am viewed as that leader. So finding that safe space.
Yeah.
Ideally, that would be somebody I can, at some point in time, sit down beside or have my distance and sit down beside. Just wondering about suggestions on that, or how others are dealing with that when you know the struggles of being in very small communities where everybody knows everything.
Yeah, that is hard. And it's hard when you're serving in a congregation about, can you have somebody who's part of your congregation as that really close friend who you can share with? Hey, a lot of questions about that. And I guess what I suggest is that the best way to find those safe and brave people to be with is to, well, in a sense, date them. If you're dating someone, what do? You spend some time with someone and say, oh, is there a connection here? How does this work? And if you like what you're seeing, then you spend more time together. If you're together the first time and you say, this is not a match at all, then you don't continue on. So I would say you try it out with different people and start saying, is this a safe person who I can start sharing with? Or if you start sharing, or, I'm feeling really angry, and they say, well, you really shouldn't be angry. That's not the right response. It's pretty clear that's not a very safe person for you to be with, and you need to move on to somebody else. So it's going to be different for different people. Are you safe enough in your community, or do you need to go outside the community to maybe somebody else who you're seeing on the screen here, somebody else in the denomination, or even somebody outside of the church? That helps, Sunny? Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Barbara.
this is Barbara. Yeah, I'd like to jump in. I have to give a plug for the ELCA, who has, again, generated this nationwide network of coaches. This is an investment our church has made. And I know not all the synods have a coaching program, but there are people available to every leader in the ELCA. Jill can tell you who the main contact would be if it's not in your state. If you wanted to have it out of state, that's available to you. And again, these are people who've been trained in these safe spaces to give all of you.
That is so good. One of the definitions I often give for a coach is a professional friend. And sometimes we pick our own friends to be the safe places. Sometimes we need to go to the professional friends. And you're right, you have amazing coaches here in the ELCA, and they are great individuals for you to turn to as safe and brave places. Thank you, Barbara.
May I speak?
Sure. Missed who that was.
My name is Karen Battle. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I just received an email, part of our Senate announcements. We have a resource coordinator, and she is sort of coordinating people's need for coaches and need for spiritual directors at this time. So that's become a resource that's now available within our Senate.
Wonderful. That's terrific, Karen. Thank you for sharing that. How about someone else? A question or a comment that you want to make? Or Jill, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, then let's turn it over to you.
And yes, so you're going to receive an invitation to jump into a room. The rooms are actually going to be very small, And we have so many dedicated coaches that coaches, you're going to find yourself in a room with another coach. So coach each other. It's perfect opportunity, friends. God bless your conversation. I'll bring you back at 5 till. I'll give you a little bit of heads up. So God bless your conversation.